welcome again to Connect. In this alternative talk show, we have been discussing how to stay connected during the COVID-19 pandemic. Today our topic is connecting with God. Social distancing and isolation have also disturbed many of our spiritual routines. What can we learn from this unique season in terms of becoming more aware of God's presence? With us here today are Miranda Heathcote from Malaga, Spain, and Michaela Copsey from London, England, and Caleb Schmidt from Herrnhut, Germany. How you guys adjusted to the new normal?
Well, here in Spain, the restrictions have been quite severe for a number of weeks already. I have two daughters, just turned 12 and 18, and my husband. So we've actually had two birthday celebrations during our time in home confinement.
Michaela.
We've been in YWAM for the last 12 years in YWAM Musenberg, and we just moved country, so that was a pretty major transition in itself. My kids think that this is just what people in England do. We just stay home and do church online.
This is Sparta!
So my husband and I have been trying to record sermons for a church. So trying to find a space in the house where we can record a sermon where it's still light so you can still see as well. And one of the kids is smashing on the window in the background. So yeah, we're doing okay. We're thankful for our backyard.
Yeah, especially with children. And Caleb.
Things seem to be opening up here. So our campus is hoping that it opens up so our community can come together.
There is hope. For most of us, life and service look very different in this season. Miranda, you are a spiritual director. Have you been able to continue with your work?
Yes, I've been able to do quite a lot online. And it's surprising in a way because spiritual direction is about walking with someone in their spiritual journey. But somehow it's worked fine to meet over Zoom and to connect with people in that way. I'm actually considering trying to facilitate a retreat for a group and see how that goes.
Michaela, you recently wrote a book, A Parent's Invitation to Spiritual Reformation. Is what you learned while you researched for the book helping you now?
Yeah, I think one of the big motivators for me in writing the book was just experiencing God in some of the unlikely places. I think we often, in Christian circles and in church circles, we expect to meet God in quiet times. We expect to meet God at worship or in a preaching or in a church service, but we might not expect to meet him in some of the mess and chaos of our homes, or caring for small children specifically was what I wrote about. So in that way, it prepared me, to connect with God in the quieter, more at home type spaces, I guess.
Caleb, you are a worship leader. What does leading worship look like at this time?
It's drastically changed. I'm usually either traveling or leading worship on our campus. Now our campus is totally decentralized and we're meeting over Zoom. And so we are faced with the challenge of what does it look like to lead a community in worship over the digital platform. And so it's been an adventure. We're learning as a base, but I'm sure so many other churches and different campuses are also learning the same thing. But it's exciting because it definitely demands a lot more engagement of each individual to go together.
Those of you who have children at home, how do you find space to spend time with God now that everyone is at home all the time?
I think the challenge to find time with God with little kids in the house was pretty challenging before the COVID. There's not a lot of hours in the day where they are not around. But since we're all in the house at the moment and babysitting is not an option, we have to get a bit more creative with making alone time, my husband and I. So we often trade off to give each other a bit of space. We've also spent a lot of time in the garden. And I have just found that to be a real a place where I've really felt God ministering to me. It means the kids can just pot around outside and I can just, somehow the Lord is just really speaking to me through nature in this specific season. So there's not a lot of quiet time in our house, but God doesn't need quiet time.
Miranda.
Yeah, well, it is a bit easier for us, I think, because our kids are that much older. In terms of sort of a structured time of having time to read and reflect, I do tend to just get up early when the house is quiet. But I'm also enjoying the unstructured ways of turning my attention to God, especially during this season. And probably because I'm a spiritual director, I ask myself a lot of reflective questions during the day. For example, my husband was scrubbing the steps in the backyard, and we were talking about the question, how is God kind of cleaning parts of our lives during this time? So those small ways of turning our attention to God during the day is where I really find life.
Yeah, we can get distracted by having too many people at home all the time, but I'm single and I live alone. But I've been distracted because my work is much busier now than normally, actually. But I found this app, it's called Lectio 365. Short 10-minute meditations or intercession times have really helped me to focus on spending time with God. There are a lot of tools available, but they say that it would be helpful to stick with one or two so that you can grow with their flow. So how do you live, Caleb?
I'm in an apartment with two other guys, and thankfully everybody in the house are extroverts. So we gel quite good together, and it's actually a great time to be together, eat together, a lot more cooking together. Because we're extroverts, be intentionally finding places in the house where we get our quiet time or time alone, and because we're noticing that we do need it.
We can become so used to our times of worship together in our communities or at church that we forget how to lead ourselves in worship. What can that look like?
I think it's a great invitation for our campuses or our communities to be challenged in the area of worship, not just intimacy and quiet time. They're almost forced to go before the Lord and be creative and sing praises or bring thanksgiving. And so for me, I'm a musician, and so it's I pick up my guitar, but even then I'm challenged to, what does it look like beyond my guitar? Living in a community, we're so used to jumping into a collective worship time or a small group worship time. But it's a beautiful invitation for the concept of worship to be broadened in our hearts individually. And so I'm excited to see what it looks like when everybody comes back together.
Miranda.
Yeah, one of the things I've been thinking about is some days I found myself feeling very scattered and unfocused and a little bit of anxiety rising in me. And I feel as though it's partly because I've been on a screen for a number of hours and I actually just need to be kind of consciously in my body. So I wonder what that means for us in the ways that we connect with God. And whether it's going to help us in some way to hold something or even to kneel at the bedside. You know, it sounds kind of traditional and old-fashioned, but to move our bodies somehow in a way that we're participating physically in our connection with God so that it's not all here.
Yeah, Michaela.
I love connecting with people online. I'm very extroverted. Normally when I'm with a group of people or a social event, I feel really energized afterwards. And when I've been doing the same thing but online, I feel quite drained afterwards. One of the things that parts of the day that have been really life-giving to me in this season have been really practical, physical things like making dinner. Normally I'm not like putting my hand up to be the person to make dinner, but at the moment it's like an activity that I can do, that I can achieve something, that I can be alone with God in the kitchen. Even cleaning the house, I absolutely hate cleaning my house. But even that at the moment is like this sense of achievement. I'm alone, I'm doing something and it can be a place of real connection with God. Actually finding that quiet time in the midst of doing other things with God has been, a real blessing in this season.
Okay, let's then talk about the family. What kind of things have you implemented to stay connected with God as a family?
I think since this was a topic that I was sort of exploring over the last couple of years, we had implemented some practices already in our family, and also being in the midst of transition and trying to give our kids some sort of rhythms that are familiar. We've just sort of continued those things in the midst of this season. So one of those things is at the dinner table talking about our days. It's a space to kind of share our hearts. Another thing that we've actually just started doing during this time is memorizing scripture.
The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing.
And our 3-year-old can pretty much almost say the whole psalm, which is amazing.
Michaela, you also say that you have been able to listen to your children and as they process their sadness about not being able to go outside and then bring God into that conversation.
Yeah, I think one of the major themes we see in the Bible is lament. And it's something that I think as a Christian community, we're not always great at doing, is making space for grief and for voicing the things that are sad or uncomfortable or make us angry or upset. But we really feel like for our kids, that's a really healthy place to be able to express those things, and without the explaining it away, without the, well, at least you have this or at least you have that, but just the space to say, man, I'm really sad. I miss my friends. Like I miss my old school, and the interesting thing about kids is they feel it so deeply, and then they move on, and later on they might come back to this question about where was Jesus when I was at school, but just giving them the space to express it and to ask it and to talk when they're ready, and allow them that grief and allow them that space to ask, why is everyone staying at home, and what is this sickness, and where is Jesus in that? And we just try and answer their questions honestly, and really great questions and conversation about Jesus in this season, which seems unlikely, but maybe it's just we have all the time.
How about then, what could it look like to establish spiritual rhythms together as a family, Miranda?
That's a good question. I think so much depends on the age of the kids and the personalities in the home. I think any mealtime can be an opportunity for an intentional conversation about what we're grateful for, what we found difficult. The church calendar is something that we can bring into our homes to realize that we're all part of a bigger story, that God is at work and has been through history and will continue to be when this pandemic is over. It's also a way for us to remember that we're part of a global family. We are family. The third thing I'd mention, I think, is celebration. I think celebration is absolutely key to who we are as the people of God, to remember the ways that God has been with us, to celebrate his presence among us, and to remind one another that he will continue to make his presence felt. So I'm a big fan of celebration.
How do you celebrate? You make a cake?
Yes, cake is often a feature. There are many keen bakers in the family. That does not include me, but I'm happy to eat the cake. And we have taken to decorating the house in themes, depending on which celebration we're currently marking. We sing, the girls are great at having spontaneous dance parties. They laugh if we join in, but we do our best.
Oh, that's great. So how about Caleb? How do you connect with God together with your housemates?
Yesterday, I woke up and I was about to jump onto a Zoom meeting, and I caught a roommate of mine from Paraguay. And usually we're out in the morning off to our campus. But yesterday we were just able to get spontaneous times of asking each other how we're doing, but also really get into a time of prayer where we're contending for similar things in this season. God, what does hope look like? Or God, what does intimacy look like on a personal level? Really desiring something out of this season, because we do feel it's special as well. We don't have this time in the normal day-to-day schedule. And so more intentional asking, hey, what are the highlights of our days? You know, it's simple things that maybe we take for granted. It's being highlighted again to see God's involvement in our guys. And we love to have fun as three guys. So we're always eating and cooking, making fun of one another, and just seeing the presence of God even in those moments. We joke about how in the future, we talk to our kids about one time in the pandemic where we're stuck in that house together.
It's quite special for three guys to share those moments together.
One of them is my brother, and we haven't lived together for the past 15 years. I'm supposed to be getting married in a month. Planning a wedding in this time is definitely getting my fiance and myself closer to God. You know, so we're coming to God pre-marriage or pre-family, of saying, God, how do we want to start this marriage? This is not exactly what was in our mind when we were planning a wedding, where we wanted maybe 150 people there. At the moment, the limit is 15. It's a beautiful time of just being before the Lord, maybe surrendering things that is in our hearts, but also allowing God to speak into that. It's brought us together in such a new way to go all in with God. It's definitely a new bonding moment for my fiance and I, going before the Lord and saying, here we are. We want to start this in a way that is honoring to you, even amongst the pandemic.
So are you going to have the wedding in a month?
We're hoping to, because we really felt and to move to pioneer a new team in Berlin in June, or in a new home. So we'll see what happens. Exciting times for sure.
Yes. Hopefully you have a wonderful and memorable wedding.
Memorable for sure.
Yes, that's true. Miranda.
One of the books that we've used a lot as a family is this one, which is called Every Moment Holy. And it's a book full of prayers, but really built around ordinary moments.
That's a great idea. So let's talk about connecting with God in a community in this time of isolation and restrictions. Not being able to gather together as a community. How can you still maintain hearing God and worshiping Him together in this season?
Trying to lead a community of, say, about 60 people over an online platform definitely took a lot of adjusting to at the very beginning. But we were so blessed and surprised at how the community has jumped on. And so from a collective point of view, we've really tried to set markers in the week, exploring worship together in this format. Bible study, we're going through Daniel at the moment. So that's quite rare that a whole community would do that together. And then the last one is we're just trying to get input from people around the world that have impacted us in our lives. So whether it's leaders in our mission or whether it's church leaders. So there's the collective end, but also the personal end where everybody really has to give in order for the collective to work over Zoom. I think is only going to make our collective community so much stronger when we're actually physically together in the same building. It's pushing passivity out the window. It reminds me of the church in Iran or China. They're the fastest growing churches, but they don't have a structure like we do maybe in the West or in open countries. And we see how they're thriving. So I'm excited to see connectivity within campuses even flourishing and going deeper all around the world.
Give us an example. What does it look like to do an inductive Bible study collectively online?
We asked people, would you commit to walking together as a collective? And so it actually looks quite similar to what I understand in a Bible core course setting. And so if you imagine Zoom, there's maybe 25 to 30 different videos. And it's amazing that Zoom has breakout sessions, the option to break out into small groups, where there's a little bit of a teaching, we read through it, and then we discuss it, of what are we observing, what are we interpreting, and so important, what are we applying into our lives in this setting.
Miranda, you also have some experiences with virtual community.
For myself and my family, we have a rhythm of connecting with another 2 households on a Friday evening for a Sabbath meal. And so we've shifted that whole rhythm to Zoom. We eat separately and then meet after we've eaten. We have one person facilitate some sort of intentional process where we get to check in with each other, and we always share communion. So we found a creative way to do that. Kind of everybody has bread and wine, and then normally when we're together we have this song that we sing, but it's always completely out of tune. We are family. And we always end up laughing, and that's pretty much how our Friday Sabbaths end.
Yes, that was wonderful.
Another thing that we're doing, we really felt the Lord say it's a season of knowing God. So we're experimenting with different people in our community, taking on an hour, going onto our community Zoom channel or Zoom account, and gather together for hours of prayer in the week. So the first 2 weeks, I think we did 3 days of 4 hours each. We started together as a community and we ended it together community, and then people filled in just like a prayer room, for instance, of praying, and people can pop in and pop out whenever they would like.
That's a great idea.
A group wrote like a 2-week devotional that was particularly focused around what's happening in the world, and shared that pretty widely, created a Facebook group so that people could follow the devotional and then share together about some of their thoughts and responses. And then sort of kind of like book clubs in a way, sort of learning communities, devotional, where people are following or reading a book together and then finding an opportunity to talk about it.
I think one thing I've really loved about just corporate gatherings and church gatherings in this time is just the sort of authenticity of it and the unpolishedness of some of what's online. Like, it's just, people don't have all the technological skills, and people don't have, it's people in their living rooms with their kids running past in the background. It's out of such an ordinary, everyday sort of place that people are coming together, and I've loved seeing that. We're not separated into our separate groups of teenagers here and kids here and old people here, but we're together because we're all together in our homes, so.
But actually what I'm loving about that online church time, my husband said, instead of seeing everybody at the back of everybody's heads because we're all standing, we're looking at each other's faces. It actually in many ways feels more connected. We are family. Perhaps the important thing to say about these virtual communities is we can have the tendency to hop in and out. I might think, oh, okay, this Sunday I'll go to this church, and this Sunday I'll go to another church on the other side of the world maybe. But there's something about consistency that is critical to growing a community that's really on a journey together. So for us to really be sharing from an authentic place of, okay, how am I experiencing this time, and how am I finding God, and how can we find God together in this place?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Caleb.
That's why our community, we're trying to set times in the week where we are going in a certain direction together.
Is there something that we can benefit from this time as far as how we connect with God in the future?
For me, one of the things that I notice and also long for as something that we could continue to walk in is the sense that we're all gathered together in this common experience. And I wonder if that will cause us to be more inclusive in our church communities. I wonder if it will deepen our capacity to connect with one another. I would love to see that. That's a hope that I have.
I'm excited as someone who normally leads people into worship. I think this is a real invitation for individuals and us as believers to really dive deep into self-leadership in our worship lives or in our prayer lives that only overflows into going deeper as a community. we can so easily attach ourselves to. Oh, they're going to lead. Oh, that person's job to speak, or that person's job to lead worship. And I think it's only a setup for a stronger and maybe even a faster move of God in the nations. I'm excited for that.
Will it maybe change our view of missions?
I also see that there is a great desire among people to show compassion to one another. I'm wondering if our expression of what it means to be God's people will overflow more naturally in acts of kindness and compassion. That would be amazing. And I wonder as well if there will be a kind of a shift in how we understand mission. Often we think of mission as going somewhere else in order to, take the good news of the kingdom, and maybe there'll be a bit of a shift to, well, how do I live with my neighbors? It feels like such an opportunity for us to experience in a deeper way that God is truly with us. He's with us in our homes as much as he is in the sanctuary of the church. He's with us in the ordinary moments, as has been said, as much as he's in the polished moments, and maybe even more. He's with us when we feel as if things are not going well. And this walk with him is not about us sort of having to make it look like everything's together and we've got it all together. And yes, we're kind of rocking this pandemic thing. We are needy people, and we need the Spirit of God to walk with us. And I don't know about everybody else, but I know for me, this season has really, that passage where it says that the whole of creation is groaning for the sons of God to be revealed. And I feel as if we're invited into this kind of common place of groaning, but from a very intimate place of God is with us in this. Jesus himself is interceding for us.
There are so many creative ways to connect with God, individually or as a community or as a family. It's really been great to hear some of your ideas and implementations. Thank you so much, Miranda, Michaela and Caleb, for inspiring conversation. And thank you for watching. This was the last episode of Connect series for now, but do follow us on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks for watching and have a good day.